So we're using different color rope so that you can identify the difference between the rope that you're taking apart and the rope you're not taking apart. And what you're doing, you have a loop in one end and just to start your knot. Just through there. And you just want to make sure that this net is going to be tight. There's not going to really be much pressure applied by the elk to the roof. Just as long as it's tight enough to hold. And you start out, make sure it's tight, by a half hitch. Snug it up. And then I like to do a double half to start out with, and then do one about every quarter of the way down, just to keep it tight. Okay. And then it really helps, are you still filming? It really helps so to alternate your half hitch. So if this one went over, this one, bring it under. And that way it'll really help distribute the stress of the knot. Okay. So we got our half hitches here, and you can see this one is a double. So I like to put 2 or 3 doubles in my string. That helps keep it tight. When we're putting on our hose clamps, it's beneficial to make sure that the tail of your hose clamp is facing away from the door so that there's nothing that could possibly catch a ring or catch the net. You'll also want to make sure that that tail is not on the inside so that an animal can't get injured on it.
The drill, they just change.
To tie these traps down, and we've went through several different types. We found the ones with the longer tails work better. That way you can get several wraps around your T-post before you hook it to yourself, and the teeth in the back of the T-post will hold it in place. On the other end of the strap, what we're doing is we're using this end to secure both ends or both pieces of the trap, the front and the side, just to give it one more thing to secure it in case this does fail. We're taking our hook and we're just hooking into the netting so it stays out of the way. So for our door line that's attached to our trigger mechanism, we use a wax braided line. This does not freeze. Before we were using like a nylon rope, and in the winter it will freeze to your trap, and then that'll actually keep your door from dropping. Just tie a loop in the middle of it so you can easily remove it for disassembly to our C-clamp on the door.
If they have a hex threaded one. Oh, do they have a nylon one? Yeah, well, you got an inch slack on the side.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, a little more.
So on this trap we used aluminum pipe to mount our rat trap to. You can use anything as long as it doesn't have any play, anything that isn't gonna flex on you. And I went with about 5 feet off the ground. I'm a short guy for this trap line. If you're trapping something like mule deer, you might have to go a little higher. anything that's not going to allow your non-targets to get trapped. So on the other end of our trigger line, it's just an anchor, and we have just a simple eye bolt directly across from the rat trap, and this is what it's tied to, and there's no play in this. And our aluminum pipes are roughly 10 inches back from center. This gives the elk enough room to get into the trap and set off the trigger, but it's not too far back to where they can reach it from outside the trap. We picked a fairly flat location for our trap, and it does have shade most of the day in case we can't respond to it immediately. This is our drop door, and this trap is set. You see we have our wax line attached to our door, just using the C-clamp, and this wax line goes all the way up over the trap on the opposite side of our trigger through this eye loop, which then feeds on over to our trigger mechanism. And the reason that we go crossways is so that you have enough play for the door to drop, because there is an eyelet here. On the other end of our trap line, our door line, we have our a ring. I think it's like a 1/2 inch ring that's here, and it's attached to this pin that's on the mouse trap. And on through the mouse trap here, you can see there's this line attached to the pedestal, and that's fed through, and there's this hair trigger line in there. So here on the inside of the set trap, we use this braided fishing line, and it's pretty fine, and I like the dark stuff so that nothing can see it. As you can see, it's really dark. You can't even see it in here. And the reason we went with this type of mouse trap or rat trap setup is it takes very minimal effort on the line in order to set it off. If you go with just the pin style, it does work, but the animal has to hit it pretty hard in order for it to set off. So when the bulls have their antlers, if you're trapping in winter, we put in these pins, go just like this, and they're easy to take in and out. But this way, when you set your trap, your bar is all the way down here. And that way, down here, and it can only go down, it can't come back up. And that way it'll keep big bulls from going in and tearing up your trap. This time of year, bulls have obviously dropped their antlers, so they don't do any good, so that's why we're not using them right now. Alright, so we want to make sure that these rings are stacked. Make sure the rope is in the front, so there's nothing going to get tangled. You can see how these rings are below the drop bar. That has to be fixed. Not all of them, the rings can fit through. So, strings are all forward, top of the bar. And this is centered so that it's holding the bar straight. So one of the last things to do after setup is to test your trap, make sure everything's set properly. You always want to make sure that your rings are stacked and that everything is lined up and nothing's going to catch on your net. And then you give it one last test, and it works great.